Attleboro City Council to order at 7 p.m. Please join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll start by reading the notice of the public hearing, or the public meeting, special meeting. Members of the Municipal Council, councilors, by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, April 28th, 2026, time, 7 p.m. Place, Council Chambers, City Hall, 77 Park Street. Purpose, to receive updates from the mayor regarding current activities and development within the City of Attleboro, including any time-sensitive matters that may come before the Attleboro Municipal Council. Sincerely, Laura Dolan, Acting President. All right. So I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion's in order. We're going to suspend the rules because this is a special meeting of the council just to hear from the mayor. This is the third time where we've had the mayor come before us on the fourth Tuesday of the month. I think this is a great opportunity to have sort of a informal discussion with the administration. So, but that is the only item on the agenda today, so that's why we are suspending the rules. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are now operating under suspended rules, and I would like to welcome the mayor.
Good evening, President Colas, thank you for having me. Hello, Municipal Council.
Good evening.
Hello. I'll keep it short. I know you guys have a full agenda, and I understand that you and Council Reynolds are okay with talking generally and then Zoo specifically.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to rattle off several things that you guys should be aware of, or that you might want more information on. Number one, Mason is back. He was away for 2 weeks of military training, and I want to state yet again publicly my gratitude to Mason as an active member of our military, and to all veterans, Councilor Angelo, President Kovis, and everybody else who has served or is serving this country. Having said that, he's back as of Monday, and he is under it, so the budget will be submitted to you on the 17th. I alerted President Kovis and Vice President Dolan already. Was it the 17th or the 12th?
The 12th.
12th, strike that.
Sorry.
Thank you, Todd. No, my error. On May 12th, so a
Mild
week later
panic
than
there.
we had hoped. Apologies, but he's working hard, and part of the challenges, as you know, with the budget is our deficit. I'll state again publicly for the record, we will be laying off several positions and leaving several vacant positions unfilled in FY27. This really, really stinks. It's not easy. These are difficult decisions. Contrary to what some folks may think, a lot of our departments are already lean, so it's hard. We will, as you already know, be using free cash to balance the budget. There are some things that still remain unknown. There are numerous union contracts that are unsettled. One thing we do know is that our situation with the state got a little bit worse. Rep. Scanlon emailed us to let us know that the state has reduced state aid by about $105,000, which is pretty much a full-time benefited position, so that's not great. So it's tough, going to get tougher, and we'll get the budget to you folks on the 12th. Wastewater department continues to face staffing challenges. If you haven't heard yet already, that particular field is getting really hard to find people who want to enter into municipal wastewater. So we're continuing to fight that. The position for superintendent is posted, but we haven't gotten any viable candidates of late. So we're going to contract for some staffing support because, of course, wastewater cannot fail. So those challenges are ongoing, and I would just say publicly to all of you present and those folks at home, if you know a young person or any person who cares about the environment and or is looking for job stability, go into wastewater. Those jobs aren't going away. Technology is making advances, but you still need folks on the job. Super important work. It's not easy work, but I hope more young people in particular consider those opportunities. I can't say much on this one, but except to say the cyber investigation is ongoing. And the reason you don't hear a whole lot is because we have a city cyber policy, and I don't want to run afoul of anything that may jeopardize our insurance coverage, so it's ongoing. when more information becomes available, and when I get permission to speak on it, I will certainly share it. But it's not me choosing to be quiet. It's because I don't want to jeopardize the city's position at all with our insurance. I think you folks heard the good news about the Global War on Terror Monument. I'm very grateful to the committee. The monument's scheduled to be installed on May 6th with a tentative dedication on Memorial Day. This is huge and long in the making. I'm really happy. It took the committee a couple of years to get here. Fundraising for over 100 grand is not easy. But it's going to be a real nice addition to the city. We have a large number of folks who are, such as President Kobus. Are you a GWAT vet too, Mike? Forgive me. Yeah, so.
No, not a,
I didn't know.
not war, no.
So there's a lot of folks who served and are serving, so I'm happy about that. And then lastly, trees on Pleasant Street. I understand but it's some hot topic of discussion. The trees on Pleasant Street are funded by Gaming Commission funds that were accepted by your body in 2018. We got about $100,000 from the Gaming Commission tied to the opening of Plainridge. Some of you may know, Council Reynolds and other folks may know, that when the casino opened, there was some concern about the impacts on surrounding municipalities for folks coming and going to the casino. So they made these funds available. We got $100,000. We used 30 grand for a study. We were challenged, frankly, to find impacts of people just driving to Plainridge. So the fund sat there for many years. Until about last year, it occurred to me, first of all, I hate wasting money. I'm nothing if not cheap. It bothered me that the funds are sitting there unused. So I was talking to Gary and Derek. One of the things that's associated with gambling and gambling addiction is mental health. So we first floated the idea to the Gaming Commission to put more trees in Balfour, right? Because outdoor space and being in nature is shown to improve people's mental health. The argument is if you have an addictive personality, you'll feel better. A little bit of a stretch, but they like the idea, but not the location, because Balfour is not on the route to the casino. So we pivoted to Pleasant, because you go down Pleasant, take a left on Lindsay. So that's why they're at Pleasant, fully funded by about $63,000 in this money that had been sitting around for almost a decade. So to all the taxpayers listening, there were very limited uses for that money, and I'm glad to be finally using it. Pleasant Street is a super busy, an increasingly busy area, and that continues to develop. So I think it's important to offset that development with more trees and greenery. It's something I'd like to do at Your Way, Council Reynolds too, and 1 and 1A. It sounds like a small thing, but if you can soften the landscape just a little bit, it helps a lot. So that's the story of the trees. And by the way, also for the record, I double checked with Derek, there should be 3 feet of clearance to satisfy the ADA. So that's the trees. That's kind of all I had as a general overview. Does any questions on any of that or anything else?
Councilor Angela?
Thanks, President Kobus. Thanks, Mrs. Mayor, for coming down. I love the trees. I think it's great. I travel a lot across the country, and I love it when I go somewhere and I see streets lined with trees.
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome. I love it, and I was very excited when I saw that. And the other thing on the cyber attack, I was recently with a company that was cyber attacked,
Yeah.
and I know you took a lot of heat for not saying enough, but honestly, from where I came from, I was actually surprised on how much was said, for the simple fact that because the Sun Chronicle made a bunch of comments and everything, and I'm like,
I know.
I almost wanted to wish that they would go through that just so they could understand that they're not allowed to talk about this. I've lived it. I've been there, and I've had a bunch of my customers live it, and it's the same pattern. You're not allowed to talk about these certain things, or it could risk further damage and stuff. Yes. So I applaud you for that and standing tough on that as well, because as you know, insurance and it's a big deal and stuff. So I've lived it, I get it, and I
Thank you, Councilor. I
respect everything
appreciate
you've
that.
the
It's
information
not
you've had.
easy. And unfortunately, these situations are occurring with more and more frequency. It's incredibly alarming across sectors that these situations are happening. So I'm grateful that we had cyber insurance, so we're probably going to be paying more for it in the future after you've had some kind of incident like this inevitably, but it's important. I'm grateful for it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Anything else generally?
With regard to the budget, you had mentioned
Yes.
layoffs, and I know like all of these city employees are people that have been around for a long time and have a lot of institutional knowledge. And I've received a few phone calls and sort of word is starting to get out about these layoffs. And it's important to me that and I think to the residents to understand that we've done everything possible to sort of mitigate the layoffs. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the 8.5% increase to healthcare costs. And is there a way to sort of push some of that onto the employees in order to reduce the layoffs, or is there anything that can be done there?
So thank you for the question. First of all, the interesting thing about the situation in which we find ourselves, we're relieved by an 8.4% increase, because as you may know, when Mason came down to you guys several months ago, we were talking
13%,
close to
right.
20.
Okay.
And in fact, some municipalities are in double digits, would have decimated us. So as strange as it is to say, we're grateful for 8.4. As Mason indicated, and anybody who's reading the paper and watching the news, it's very likely that these rates are going to continue to increase into the next year, which is going to kill not only municipalities, but the private sector too. It's a real problem. To answer your question, President Kobus, there's nothing we can do in the short term, but one of the things that's been on my mind since day one is addressing the city split, the way that the city right now contributes 75% to employees' premiums, the employee pays 25%. We're going to reevaluate the split and/or plan design. We have some really rich, wonderful health insurance offerings, but we need to kind of figure out a way to make it more cost effective to the city without seriously diminishing the employees. But that conversation will begin once our union negotiations conclude. We're going to turn our attention to that. And that's what a lot of municipalities are doing right now, is because the deficit is driven by largely health insurance. So addressing that, and keep in mind, there is no overnight answer here. I use a sailing metaphor. You have to start tacking in a certain direction, right? And so if you had 1 degree north on this day, in 6 months you're going to be much further off from the original target. So the point is, it's going to take time to realize the real returns on these changes, but they need to be made nonetheless. So those conversations will begin in earnest, 100%. But in the short term, no. We're laying people off because the increases are tied to insurance, and health insurance is tied to full-time employees. It stinks, but that's the calculus in which we find ourselves. So yeah, so we'll begin those conversations shortly, as are many other municipalities.
Do we have other questions before we move on to the zoo? What about with water and wastewater? Where are we with Wading River and the larger project?
Wading River, the temporary plan is running, which is great. It's remarkable when we think back. The city ran basically on one plant for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, which is remarkable to me in retrospect. But the temporary plant is up. The challenge with the temporary treatment plant at Wading River is it doesn't filter out manganese. So if and when manganese level spikes, again, as it often does, we got to shut that plant down. That'll put us back on Manchester only, on the West Street plant. Right now, the last time I checked, we were still in a mild drought status, so I'm hoping the manganese doesn't peak anytime soon, that we can keep running the 2 plants. And that when we switch to the West Street plants, now that we fixed the ozone system, we don't have to blend anymore. That's over. But we are going to need Mother Nature's, assistance if we do go to one water source. So progress is being made there. We're waiting the results of the yield study to see our capacity. We had talked about, wells and all that other stuff. I want to see really where we are and what, if anything, we need to do. So that report will tell us a lot. But right now, the biggest hang-up, President Kobus, is that the temporary plant doesn't filter out manganese, so we're going to go back to 1 at some point, hopefully not for long.
And that was, we knew that
Yeah.
was the case.
Yep.
Any other questions before we move on to the zoo? Hearing none, do we have a status update on how things are going with the zoo?
Yeah, I have several points, some of which are in the news, so forgive me for repeating. And just for the record, I had, as I mentioned when I came down last time to talk about the zoo, I reached out to the Friends 3 years ago when we floated $500,000 to the zoo. I reached out again to them. I've now met with them twice in my office and went to their most recent meeting. One of the things that the Friends indicated to me is that they were never really given a target. They were never really given a list of projects. So I drafted a license agreement that gave them the more increased ability to fundraise on city property at the zoo, and at the same time set a target goal of $100,000 minimum contribution a year to the zoo. That could be financial or in-kind contributions. They could buy the equivalent amount of equipment and materials, however they saw fit. Some of their members had concerns with that number and other issues, so they sent back a proposed revisions, reducing their contribution to $75K a year. Fine, whatever, that's fine, right? We'll take as many and as much as you want to give, because I'll state again publicly what I repeated to them recently. Whatever path forward there is for the zoo involves increased support from the Friends. That is true in every single municipality that has done a public-private partnership. The municipality has skin in the game, but these Friends nonprofit groups do pick up a substantial load. I'm not putting it on them. I'm not saying it's their fault, but I just want to be clear to all involved. We can't do it alone, so we're hoping for more support from them. So the solicitor reviewed the proposed changes from their attorney today, and now we're going to go send it back to them and try to reach an agreement as soon as possible. Having said that, they don't have to enter into any agreement at all, right? They're a private nonprofit, they can do what they want. But the goal of this was to firm up our relationship and have some settled expectations, if you will. So I'm hoping we can move forward on that. But even if we don't, they can still do whatever they want to do and fundraise for the zoo. We'll take any and all donations they want to give us. So that's the status of that. Earmarks, I understand from our state delegation, particularly Senator Feeney and Rep. Scanlon, that they're advocating for earmarks at the state right now. We'll see how those go, because their budget is still, the state budget's still unresolved. But that would be great too. Again, those are one-time monies. The key to the zoo's future is recurring revenues and funding sources. So I just want, I'm sure you folks know, but for the public, earmarks are great. We can do work with them, but it's the ongoing, operations of the zoo for which we are looking for support. As you may not be surprised to hear, zoo memberships are up significantly of late, so that's good. And I know that matter of the fees is coming before your body next week or next regular meeting. Council Reynolds and we are working all different channels, and I reached out to the CEO of Zoo New England. So there's been some questions about Zoo New England, and basically the two state-owned zoos, which are Stone Zoo and Franklin Park Zoo. Interestingly enough, in case you don't know, I'll share with you this little tidbit. Several years ago, I think it was in the 90s-ish, late 90s, the state literally, by state law, created a quasi-municipal agency, which was called the Commonwealth Zoological Society, with the specific purpose to serve and support the Stone Zoo and Franklin Park Zoo, over which the state runs and owns. They morphed into Zoo New England, and we met with the director, and as Council Reynolds can attest, I was desperately hoping she would say, hey, you're pretty, inexpensive compared to Stone Zoo and Franklin Park. I was hoping she'd put her arm around us and say, we got you. Didn't do it. But she did, however, say that her two zoos and Zoo New England is facing a lot of the same challenges we're getting. Getting enough money, particularly for the capital improvements. And she also said, look, inherently, it's not an ideal business for a municipality to be in, right? It's challenging. We don't run businesses well. We're government, So she said that. She wasn't surprised by our capital improvement needs. She said they were generally on par with what she sees at zoos, particularly municipally owned zoos, right? When you don't have money, we're not known for investing in our capital improvements. But she also gave some really good tips when she took over, which was, I think, less than a year ago, after a CEO had been there for many years. And I should say this woman was amazing. I'm going to give her a shout out. Stephanie Brindley, Air Force vet, rock star 100%. She said when she first took over Zoo New England, she hired a CFO. So the idea of having somebody with a little bit more fiscal mindedness and financial savvy is going to be key, again, to whatever future the zoo has, right? Mm-hmm. Because fundamentally, you're taking revenue. It is somewhat of a business model, right? We charge revenues, we sell things, so I was glad to hear that. But it's a good relationship that we built there, and I think we could reach out to her again. And you don't know this, Council Reynolds, but what did I tell you today? I got a call from the former CEO of Zoo New England. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward, this gentleman led that group for 40 years, so I'm really looking forward to hear any guidance or input he has. But generally the theme, folks, is that the challenges we have are not unique, right? It's no one's fault. It's inherently a difficult thing to do and getting increasingly difficult in light of the budget challenges. It's not the zoo's fault that they are where they are. It's not the employees' fault. It's no one's fault that we find ourselves in this situation. But difficult decisions will have to be made, if not this year, very likely next year. But in the meanwhile, we are working in earnest on all fronts, so. And then lastly, one of the things we're working on, Barry Lacasse, Derek and I, are particular improvements to the pavilion. The capital improvements, you'll notice the capital improvements book has improvements to the pavilion at $55 million. That's not happening. I don't think that's the right approach here. We're gonna try to keep the pavilion going as it is and do some improvements over there. Barry reached out to Home Depot. They're gonna support our efforts. We're gonna reach out to another kind of lumber supply company who's gonna supply materials and workers to redo the roof at the pavilion and re-side it. It needs a real facelift. It needs a lot of interior work as well. But in my opinion, the future of the zoo is not the go big or go home approach, which was outlined in the master plan. I think the future, if again, there is one, it's to kind of preserve and protect what we have, not go big. What that would mean is when certain animals like the lion, when Ramsey goes, we're not gonna get on the lion because under AZA standards that enclosure is too small, we're just grandfathered in. Into improvement, I think there's a quote in either I think it's strategic plan that says $10 million to increase the lion exhibit. I'm of the opinion that's not a great use of taxpayer money, that we can effectively have, I think, an enjoyable zoo experience with different animals in the existing footprint and exhibits of the zoo. I think that's the prudent way forward. If we are to have a zoo, let's keep what we have, improve it, and stay that course. That's where we are right now. Again, all of this is subject to discussion again with whatever next year's financial picture may bring. So that's kind of the, oh, and lastly, we issued an RFP for concessions. That RFP closes next week. We thought that was a straightforward approach because contrary to what people think, the concession stand doesn't make a lot of money. There's not a lot of profit there when you pay your salary costs and materials and food costs. So working with Derek, we decided the best course this year was to try to do a concessions approach, which is valuable for a couple of reasons. We can expand the window of operations. The concession stand can also serve the zoo, the park more broadly. So there's some upsides to doing this. So I'm excited to see what response we get to our concession RFP, which in case you don't know, you probably don't know, the bidder would pay a fee to the city and then we would have a revenue split with incomes they make. I forget what the number was, over 50. I forget what the split was, but we thought it was a good idea, a good approach. So we'll see what that yields. And that's about it for the zoo, generally speaking.
Are there any questions? Comments?
I had a question, but you know, with everything that's going on,
Go ahead.
I'm sure the answer will be no. Sorry.
Go ahead.
But you know, I live down the street, so I've been going over to the zoo a lot, and they were telling me the regular employees are spending far too much time now that they're getting so busy, you know, checking on the bathrooms, making sure they're clean, because
Yep.
that's where a lot of the families go first, and you don't want it to be nasty. You know, that's your first impression. So I was just wondering, you know, is there a time frame for the seasonal part-time employees?
Yeah, that's, you'll have to ask the park superintendent that question, but yes,
Okay.
absolutely, Council
Okay.
Morrissey, we do staff
Well,
up.
I just felt funny asking with everything that's going on.
No, we need to staff up, you're right, we'll be doing the zoo a disservice and the guests a disservice, so staffing up at this time of year should absolutely be happening. This year should be not different than other years when we staff up for the summer because of the increased crowd, so that's a Derek question, staffing is what that he should be working on. So yeah, to your point, we do intend to have extra folks there for those duties and others, yeah. The bathrooms are special, I get. I got
Other-
kids, you got kids, so.
Questions or comments? Councilor Holmes?
Thank you.
Councilor Waterman?
Me
Go ahead,
first. Oh,
Councilor Holmes.
Thanks. No, I appreciate you pivoting and just really starting to really look at this in a different way and having the meetings you're having. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome, Councilor Holmes. As I've said, I'm not gonna, if we're spending $900,000 of free cash and taxpayer money, I will not waste it. I will admit, I have serious concerns, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but man, I hope we're wrong about next year, but I will do everything I can. Look, there is a slim path forward, but it's gonna take a lot of folks to step up. And when I mentioned like memberships being up, that's great, but it has to be sustained. In the research that we did, what happens when a municipality announces a situation like a zoo closing or changing, there's a nostalgic bump. We'll ride that wave. But then we need more. It's all about, as it is in everything we do, is long-term financial stability, not just of the zoo, but of the city more broadly, which are things we should be thinking of. But yeah, so I appreciate it. I hope we get lucky. I really do. So.
Councilor Waterman?
Well, I certainly appreciate your focusing on the zoo, and you've got a lot more to focus on than that. I know that.
Yes, yeah.
What could you say about the morale of the zoo? I think that's important, the morale of the folks that work there.
I can't speak to the morale. I mean, I don't know.
I would hope
I
that,
don't know.
I
I'm
would hope
probably
with,
likely mixed, but
I would hope that with the Friends coming forward, making a pledge that helps.
Yes, I think they would. I don't want to speak for the employees. I think it would help the zoo overall and the employees if the Friends stepped up and gave more. If anybody stepped up and gave more, maybe there's a nice benefactor out there who wants to bequeath $1 million to the zoo. That would be to all our benefit. I think we'd all feel a little bit better, staff and elected officials and everybody. But it's operations as normal for the time being. So,
Councilor Morrissey, then Councilor Angela?
I'm not sure how this works because I don't know all the ins and outs of the government, but is there any way that the zoo can be structured more like a business with the gift shop? You know, if they were given 60,000, let's say, out of the budget,
yeah.
once they return that 60, can they just keep plowing their profits back in rather than the superintendent having to come and ask for an increase in the budget? Because if they're using profits, like, they're really not taking more money from the city, they're reinvesting what they made.
Council Morrissey, I do not disagree with you, but we don't run like a business, right? We have procurement laws and all sorts of other procedures that we can't bypass. But to your point, and I think it was in the report, I think it was in a footnote, years ago when the zoo really pivoted in the late 90s when they built the pavilion, right? Before then, the zoo was free, open to all. They built a pavilion, spent a lot of money, and the council at that point said, okay, we want to start charging fees. So the council originally created an enterprise fund for the zoo. But that lasted less than a year and they pivoted to a revolving fund. So for your information, an enterprise fund is how the water and wastewater department works, right? They are self-sustaining. Their revenues are on the rate, right, and fees. That was only less than a year of the approach of the zoo, and they pivoted to a revolving fund for reasons I don't fully understand. But to make that switch now, the zoo would not be able to handle that right now. They wouldn't be able to generate enough revenue right now to keep themselves going. So if we can get there, that would be great, and I know people have said that. But so let's say that the zoo operating budget all in is like $1.8 million, $1.9 million. That's one part of the problem. Then you've got to get money, right, for your capital improvements, right, and your equipment and other needs outside of your ordinary operations. So they'd be really challenged at this late point to get there. Again, there may be a way forward where some of that burden is split, but to your fundamental point, it's not enterprise funds, not operating that way right now. It would be a hard pivot to get there. And we're not a business, so we can't just have like an open tap. And you can talk to your auditor about why that is the case, but that's not how it works. You have to procure the next dollar amount, right? You can only procure things, strike that. When you start procuring things that are above $10,000 and you have to abide by certain rules and regs, the more expensive things are, the more that processes are involved to protect public monies, et cetera. So it's not that easy, is the short story. Would that it were. But the answer might be, and years ago, the Friends, as I understood it, the Friends not only ran concessions, they also ran the gift shop. The beauty of a nonprofit is that they can function in that way that government can't, right? They can do a lot more, they're more versatile, and some of the rules that the government has to follow do not apply to nonprofits. So there is a way forward, if they're open to it, where they would take over both those operations and they could generate more revenue than we could and pivot a lot faster than we could. And I think that was the case years ago, that they had, I don't know if you know, Council Reynolds, that they certainly had more involvement in the concessions, and I think for a brief time, gift shop too.
Well, they had more money too, because they had places like TI and Balfour and those people donating.
The big
Peter
benefactors.
Otmar, the bigger businesses. We don't have those kind of benefactors anymore.
Yeah.
Councilor
It's a
Angela?
good question, it's a very fair point.
Thanks, President Cobus. Mandy Simone, I know there's always a challenge with getting help and stuff because you always have the bids and everything, but one of the ways to get around it, because I always see people online talking about, hey, I'd like to help, maybe a retired builder or an actual
Yeah.
builder or an electrician and stuff. And I've had some people reach out to me and how can we possibly help? Is that an easier path to do that through the Friends of Cape and Park Zoo? Is that an easier way to do that, to get around that, or?
No, so people can help. Derek has volunteers, they sign a waiver, right? You can sign a waiver and do work, and that's what we've just done recently when they had the volunteer day at the zoo several weeks ago. So you can do that. I guess it depends, council, what they want to donate.
And
But
maybe it's, I guess one of my things is like some of the pavilion stuff, and hey,
Yes.
we get, some wood from Home Depot,
Yep.
and then we get some builders, we get some other people that want to do it, and that's a way they can possibly do that.
Yes, and they're going, right, we're working, they can do either way. So you guys may know the zoo actually has a donation fund, so people can donate directly to the zoo, and I'm happy to say that donate button is now on the front page of the zoo webpage. But there's several ways you can go about it. Going through the Friends is somewhat easier, as you know, because they don't, the prevailing wage, procurement, all that stuff. But we do welcome and accept support from volunteers. They have to sign a waiver in case they get injured on city property. We have to be, obviously you want to have people who don't present potential liabilities to the city, so you want to be a little bit careful. But we are readily getting materials and stuff donated to the zoo. It should be coming to your body for acceptance of these things, so yeah. So anybody, Counselor, who expresses that interest, you can send them in Derek's direction. He can either figure it out himself or send them to the Friends, but whatever the best avenue is.
All right, I'll
But both
reach
things
out.
are happening right now.
All right, I'll
you
reach
know.
out to those individuals and let them.
Yeah, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I do know the Friends was working with a group of folks to have like a volunteer day of their own. I don't know the current status of that, but they were trying to organize a volunteer day, so I don't know where they are with that, but
All right, thank you.
good.
Anything else? One of the questions that I had that you answered earlier was about the $900,000 from free cash, and I was wondering if that number had stayed the same. And I know the budget hasn't
Yeah.
come down yet, but
Well, it's the same. It's funny because we just had this conversation. It is the same. Because our approach this year, we could lay off more people and not use free cash, right? I mean, we have a gap. How we cover that gap is up to us. We're laying off 6 or 7 people, and then free cash is gonna pick up around 900,000 of that. There's an argument to say lay off more people, save your free cash, right? But the world we're in right now, the harsh reality is we cannot close the gap without some use of free cash. The question is how much free cash we use. And we're very likely gonna be in the same position. And I think it's important that we feel that, if you will, like, this situation stinks, and it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna set the city back. And when municipalities get set back, you have to scrape and claw your way back to where you were before. And it could be years before we get some of these positions back. And as I mentioned to you folks before, the opportunity costs of things that aren't gonna happen, we'll never really know. But to your point, Councilor Cobus, President Cobus, we are using that much free cash. Right now, laying off more people would be, it was difficult to find 6 or 7 people. And I know the public will roll their eyes, but, and we're not, Attleboro is not that fat, you know what I mean? So that's the path now, but it's still around 900K. As I said, we still have unresolved union negotiations. We did get the open enrollment numbers from the health insurance, so Mason's rolling those in. And we still don't know where the state's gonna land. They haven't really done us many favors yet, but, hope springs eternal.
and you had mentioned, our state delegation bringing in earmarks,
Yes.
but like we sent the joint resolution for
Yes.
Chapter 70 money in the school funding from the school committee, us and
Yes.
you. You had mentioned that we're hearing that it's going to be $100,000 less in state
Yeah,
funding. So
state aid.
have we seen any movement in sort of larger strategic sort of support
No.
from the state at all?
No,
No.
nope. Not, and if I'm wrong, enlighten me, but no. No. Right now, I'll be honest with you, President Cobus, I don't, and in all due respect to our state, I don't sense that there's enough of an appetite. To quote someone whom I respect, I don't know that things are bad enough yet. But there is no way forward for most municipalities in the Commonwealth without the state involved. Health insurance is going to, and school costs, right, are going to cripple municipalities. So at some point, our friends at the state have to roll their sleeves up and help us out, man. But I don't think it's this year. I really don't. And I don't know if anybody's hearing anything differently, but I'm not hearing anybody coming to our rescue. Not now. So I don't know how bad it's gonna have to get. I mean, you guys, we're looking at a $2.5 million deficit. There are municipalities with triple that. Closing libraries, I mean, bad.
Counselor Holmes?
I was just gonna add that Mansfield's doing an override just for level services. I mean, this is what's happening in the Commonwealth. There's a lot of people that are voting just to have level services, so
There's a record number of overrides, and I don't know what the success rate is right now, but as I've said before, I'm not there yet. I'm not proposing an override. We haven't done everything we can do yet, particularly addressing the health insurance split and the plan benefits, but it's not good. So to answer your question, President Clovis, sorry, I don't see a whole lot happening. Again, I don't know what the Senate is planning up there. I don't know. I don't know. And as much as I'm grateful for earmarks, there's a very fair point to be made, right? Put the money back, give it to the municipalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because earmarks are really not the ideal to distribute public monies. Because politics is involved, so let's get out of that business, right? Let's distribute it fairly, apportion appropriately. I don't see that happening, so. Sorry, yeah.
No,
Man,
it's a
it's
good
dark. It's just
conversation.
dark.
It's
dark
a good
and
conversation to have.
Not
And-
good. So yeah, Mason will be down on the 12th, and we'll have all the budget meetings, and it's gonna be hard. I think the last time the city did this, I think Councilor Cobus and Councilor Reynolds, you guys were here the last time the city made any number of layoffs, which I think was like the 2018-ish era, so it's been a while. And here we are again, and it's not just losing folks now, it's the losses and the impact of them years down the road, so.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Mayor, I appreciate you coming down and having these frank
appreciate the
conversations, so
opportunity.
thank you.
And folks, the door's always open, answer emails, phone calls, have a coffee. We're all in this together. It's not me against you. We are one team here. We're on Team Attleboro. I hope we can row in somewhat in the same direction. We may not always agree on how we get there, but we have to get to a point that works for all parties and all residents. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, I move to adjourn at 7:36. Motion's in order. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
I call Personnel, Veterans, and Human Resources to order at 7:37. Members present, Councilor Tavares, Councilor Waterman, and myself. We have Allison Wood gracing us with her presence. Come on up to the podium. She is going for the Board of Trust Fund Commissioners.
I am. Good afternoon. Good evening, I should say, not good afternoon.
Address and...
Oh, I'm sorry. 61 Thayer Farm Road. I was approached by Laura Gignac and asked, if I want to be interested on being on the board, and I said, sure. So I went to a meeting, and two of the members, I know one's my neighbor, and then there's another member. It was a good meeting. And I wanted to give back to the city and volunteer. So that's basically it.
I can tell you, for those that don't know Allison, Allison has worked for the city and directly with the mayor for how many years?
13.
13
I've
years.
been up in the office for
So there's
13.
not a lot that she hasn't seen over her 13 years' time. Any questions? Questions, comments?
It's more of a comment.
Councilor
than-
Dilcio.
Allison, great to see you. Great to see you coming back, and I think your institutional knowledge will just go a long, long way. And it's just good to see you come back, so I think you do a great job, so thank you for staying
you.
involved. Great to see you.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm just going to say ditto, because you just retired, but to come back now shows how much you care.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
is there something you can inform us about? I don't think we've had too many people placed on the trust fund commissioners over the
And there's
time.
only 3 members.
3 members.
And unfortunately, Martha Conti was on the board, and so that is the position that I would be filling, if you confirm. What they talked about when I was in the meeting is going through all of the trusts and actually, which Laura has all of them in files, and actually reading them and making sure the money is being used properly, which I'm sure it is, but I mean, they wanted to just easily write on the file, let's say, this is for this, instead of having to go through and read them every single time there's a request. So that's one of the things that they talked about. And I'd love to do that, since I reviewed some contracts. I helped the city solicitor review contracts, so I thought that would be kind of interesting. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Well, I think obviously you're gonna be a great addition with, like, Councilor Delacio said, with your institutional knowledge, and, so it's spot on, and great that Laura had contacted you, so.
Yes. I'm
So
glad she
great.
did.
All right, we'll
Right.
look forward to seeing a lot more of you.
Great, thank you.
Allison.
All right.
Good to see you, Allison.
All right, from the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Allison Wood to fill an unexpired term on the Board of Trust Fund Commissioners, term to expire February 2027.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. Obviously, we just heard from Allison, and I think we're very lucky to have Allison on the Board of Trust Fund Commissioners. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to accept the donation of the Global War on Terror, GWOT Monument Bench and Foundation from the Global War on Terror Monument Committee in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro. Thank you, Councilor Tavares. Obviously, this is great, and this is going to get presented on Memorial Day, on, I think, the weekend of the, I think on the 25th, I think is what it is. So so they've done a great job with this and everything else that is going along with this, and it's just been fantastic. So I'm excited to see this unveiled and look at all this, and so this is going to be great. Any questions? Councilor Delacio.
Thanks. Again, it's more of a comment, just really looking at what this committee has done in such a short amount of time is pretty impressive in terms from the fundraising, getting everyone together. I know last term, former President Cook was down here several times with members of the committee. But I think what's really impressive is the amount of engagement that our local veterans have. You don't get that in every community. A lot of times it's a parade here or there, or it's, putting out flags, which is all really important. But our veterans here in this city are involved on a regular basis, continuing basis. So I think this is just another great example and just puts Attleboro ahead of so many other municipalities.
Well said. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. Actually, that's all for Human Resources and Veterans Committee. I call for adjournment at 7:42.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 7:42.
I call the Transportation and Traffic Committee, you should know, 7:42. And from the docket of, let's see, February 17th, 2026, we have two motions. The first motion, I'll read, new business to conduct a review of traffic and pedestrian safety conditions in the area of North Avenue and Flora Road, including but not limited to vehicle speeds, traffic patterns, pedestrian crossing needs, and the feasibility of traffic calming or other safety measures.
Second.
Thank you. So the motion is now in order. This business, to be totally honest, nobody that I've spoken to has found any issues down there. I spoke to Chief Hegney on 2 occasions, most recently last week, and he has not had any issues in the Flora North Avenue area to speak of. The motion sort of looks like, it strikes me as traffic calming is part of what they're saying. And so this came in front of the Mayor's Traffic Safety Commission, and they did not find anything wrong either. I think there were 4 members of the commission that went down several different times. And I went down Flora as well, which is a very quiet street. And so I really have nothing to report that's off color going on down there. It seems to be a quiet area. There's a sidewalk along the Flora Road side of the North Avenue that seems fine. So those are the end of my comments. Are there any questions or concerns? Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. So, Chair Waterman, it says, the new business to conduct a review of traffic and pedestrian safety conditions. What was that review? What were they looking for? I know it's quiet now, but how quiet is it during football season? You know, is that,
Well, it isn't football season, so,
well, it will be again at some point.
Yeah, at
right?
some
Sooner than
point.
later. So, because it's kind of an annual thing. So I guess the question is, what exactly were we looking for? When did this come in? Was it as a result of stuff going on during football season? I don't know that, I'm just curious as to what exactly
well,
the review was.
I didn't know who put this in. Councilor Tavares, is new business. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure, yeah. So I recall submitting this several months ago. This stemmed from a conversation with a constituent. And so part of the traffic concern, I think, was with school, when school let out, in terms of kids crossing the street on North Ave. I believe I sent the contact information for.
You did for the other one, not
Okay.
for this one.
Okay. It may be worth reaching out to that resident to talk through some of those concerns and issues. And I think I maybe had voiced that when I submitted the business as well. But that may be worth looking at.
I don't have the name of the person in that area. If you
Yeah,
have,
that's fine. We can talk offline.
okay, that would be fine. Councilor Morrissey, do you have any concerns or thoughts on this?
I don't. I was at the meeting when members of the traffic safety said that they went out there, but I don't recall what time of day they were there judging the traffic. Do you recall if they said the times? I know they were there multiple times, but I honestly don't recall if it was why school was getting out or, driven anything like that.
Well, at least one time I was there when school was getting out, I know that. Bishop Fian was getting out pretty close to when I was there. And I didn't notice anything unusual in the traffic going down North Ave at that time. But what we can do is we can hold on to this and we can just, and I can visit with the individual that originally put in the in the concern, and we can wait for football season if we need to, and find out. Yes, Councilor Reynolds.
I just want to, this goes along with what we're talking about here is, we know now Councilor Tavares brought this in, but if they looked at it and it says that they have, where's the information from them? Where is what the Traffic Study Commission wrote to you?
Well, I can read you what they wrote.
Well,
Thank you for that. Several Traffic Study Commission members went to this intersection at various times and observed traffic flow with no egregious driving patterns. North Ave has a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, and several signs along the road reinforce this. There's a clear line of sight in both directions exiting Flora Road, and they recommended to refer this matter to the police department as an enforcement action. And
and you did that.
I did that.
And Chief Hegney has suggested that he doesn't see it as an area that needs additional police there at the end of a
He
school
said,
day.
as far as we know, everything is normal down there.
Could you get that in writing as well?
I can ask him,
Well,
sure.
I think he would be willing to put it in writing if he thinks it's, I think we should have something that we can tell people why, or that Councilor Tavares or yourself goes back to the person that put it out there. That the chief has been down there, and I agree with Councilor Delicio that during football season down there near Fian, that's a mess. It's even messy after school. All the kids park on the side of the street going up north and the street going into Fan. It's a lot of traffic down there, so I would be surprised, and the next one you're calling, that has always been a problem, Stobbs Drive, Holcott and Quincy. That's not new. That's not new to the complaints that they've asked, so it would be nice to have, whether the chief would come in or, who was there and what time of the day. Is it during football season? Is it during the sports seasons? Because that's when it's bad down there.
Okay. Are there any other concerns, questions? Counselor DeLisio?
Yeah, I wish you would have led with the decision from the traffic study. I think it would have kind of better directed the conversation. But even when I'm looking, hearing what they said, listening to what they said, if Chief Hagney says there are no concerns, he's gonna know. He's gonna know, and I think that those two pieces together would have really done a better job of navigating this conversation. So this is what, the second committee meeting in a row, we're gonna rescind a second, it's gonna go back in, and then it'll come back out. I would be open to striking it, to be quite honest, based on what the chief says. I'll be talking to him later in the week, so I'll be asking him about this as well.
Okay, so you would like to hold off until you have that conversation, I'm sure, then.
You can do whatever you want as the chair.
Oh, I know
If
that.
we're rescinding the second, and if that's what the ask is, I'll rescind the second, but I would just like, personally as a member of this committee, to not, 2 weeks, come back, have the same discussion, rescind, come back, and just, I'd like to see it done more comprehensively, I guess, especially where it came from a resident.
Okay. So would you rescind your second then?
I'll rescind my second again.
Okay. We have one other piece of new business, and I will read what the Traffic Study Commission said about that in a minute. New business from the docket of February 17th, 2026, to review traffic safety and sightline conditions on Stobbs Drive, specifically on the easterly side between Holcott Drive and Quincy Way, and evaluate the feasibility of prohibiting on-street parking in this area due to the curvature of the roadway and the resulting reduction in driver visibility, including the installation of no parking signage where appropriate. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So visualize yourself going down Stobbs Drive, leaving North Ave and going down Stobbs Drive, and passing Holcott, which is just beyond Fian, and approaching Commonwealth. And there is a curve at the end of the road. When you get to the very end of Stobbs, it curves around and becomes Commonwealth. So the Traffic Study Commission visited this location, as did I, several times during church services, which are on Saturday morning, and off hours as well. The Traffic Study Commission wrote that they found on-street parking does cause a concern with traffic heading north and potentially being forced to cross over to oncoming traffic. Cars were observed also parking half on the sidewalk, which caused pedestrians to walk on the street. The recommendation was to place no parking signs on the east side of Stobbs, which would be the right side of Stobbs as you're approaching that curve. I hope I'm not being confusing on that. Between Holcott Drive and Quincy Way. And and they recommended also to defer the decision of the location of the signs to DPW, as trimming the overgrowth of trees impeding passage on the sidewalk. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none, I felt that this also needs no parking signs. I spoke to the police chief, and he said you can't park on a curve anyways. And so that's as far as I've gone. I did not feel it was necessary, Councilor Tavares, to speak to the person that you gave me the name for, because I totally agreed with this. And so that's why I would like to make a motion that we accept this
Point of order,
point of order,
the
yes.
motion's already in order. You read the motion and you seconded it.
Okay. So all those in favor of this
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
Okay, we have an aye, I'm also an aye.
Point of order, or if I may, Councilor Waterman, I think we should rewrite this to specify what exactly it is we're approving before we vote it out to the full council. Right now, it just says new business to conduct a study, essentially. And I think if we're going to approve something, there should be something for the council to actually act on. And right now, as written, I don't know that it does that. So I think we should rewrite it. I agree with you. It makes sense that all of these things should happen, but what exactly would we be voting on?
So I have a motion that I hope to be able to introduce next week as new business that pertains to this, that we'll talk about signs putting up there.
If I may, my suggestion would be to rewrite this to be whatever that new motion is, to be whatever action results from the Traffic Study Commission for us to act on, whether it's add signs or do, whatever that is. And I would just modify this, because as written now, this isn't really anything for us to be able to act on.
I agree,
Okay.
I agree. So that concludes the business for the traffic.
Point of order, we have to withdraw the second.
Oh,
Okay. Would you withdraw it?
withdrawn.
You withdraw in a second. Okay. Now, that concludes the business for the Traffic and Transportation Committee. I move to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 7:57.
Call the Zoning, Land Use, and Sustainability Committee to order at 7:57. And I have Councilor McIntyre and Morrissey on my committee. And I have one motion. From the docket of February 17th, 2026, I entertain a motion to amend Chapter 18, Local Wetlands Protection Ordinance of the revised ordinances for the city of Attleboro as follows. To amend 18-1.8 permits and conditions by deleting lands within 25 feet of resource areas and a 25-foot wide continuous and undisturbed wetlands protection zone, and inserting in place thereof land within 50 feet of resource areas and a 50-foot wide continuous and undisturbed wetlands protection zone as follows. If the Conservation Commission, after a public hearing, determines that the activities which are subject to the permit application or the land and water uses which will result therefrom are likely to have a significant individual or cumulative effect upon the resource area values.
Point of order. Didn't you read this all
I
already?
did read it before when we were talking about it going
I
to a
don't
public
believe,
hearing.
I don't believe you have to read it again. It's in the book.
You did, no, you're fine.
If it's
So
read into
just
the record.
second it, somebody.
I'm sorry.
No, don't, I'm just saying you don't have, it was pretty long. You don't
Thank you.
have to-
I appreciate that because it was pretty long and
Yeah.
I do appreciate that.
Well, I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay. So then the motion's in order. I do have some comments before I take some from the committee. And I wanted to mention that we did hear from many people at the public hearing, both for and against. We had 9 people spoken against
in opposition, but in favor, we had 24 speakers, and of those, we had representatives from 7 civic groups in the city: the Sustainability Commission, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Comprehensive Plan Committee, Environmental Master Plan, Friends of the 10 Mile River, Attleboro Land Trust. And of these groups and the 24 individual speakers, they represented over 175 families. There were 7 additional people in the audience who were there in favor, who chose not to speak to make the testimony even longer. Multiple letters and emails have been sent to the council through Jen, both for and against. So it seems as though this is a great number of residents who are in favor of the amendment. And I wanted to also mention that some of the people in opposition, they had talked about looking to get tax abatement for land that they had thought might be unusable. And I wanted to mention, because I did reach out to her. She gave me some information saying that increased wetlands buffer zone does not automatically deem the land unusable and warrant an abatement, but applications for an abatement can be handled on a case-by-case basis. And there are exemptions that are allowed that we did read through before, and so did Nick Wiley at public hearing. And for an abatement, they need to provide the proof that it's overvalued, and then he would look at it on a case-by-case basis. So I also did speak with Nick Wiley, and he did let me know that some of the instructions on the amendment, where it says no disturb zones, will be changed to wetlands protection zone, because that will help with some of the confusion and what will look like unable to use the land. And I also wanted to mention that this isn't really a partisan issue. It's really for everybody, because it really does save the extremely high costs when floods destroy properties and businesses and personal property. It's not going to cure it, but it will help it from getting worse. And so if anybody else on the committee has comments, I'm happy to hear them. Go ahead.
Well, if he's going to change some of this language, particularly where it says no disturb, I think this has to be voted out and reintroduced with the correct language. The other thing is, at the very end, speaking neither for nor against, was a proposal that was very different and really making that 25-foot current buffer work. Adding those plants, doing a lot of things that might not even happen with 50 feet, if they make a concentrated effort. So I would like to see that looked into as well, since everyone already has 25 feet. If the city could make that 25 feet, do the job, that maybe 50 feet just left there undisturbed won't do. I think that would be worth looking at, and I think that would be a way to appease the people with the environmental issues, as well as the homeowners who feel like they would be losing their land. And I thought that proposal was very well thought out. I thought it will make people have a very attractive buffer area before the wetlands, and I think it should be investigated, possibly at the same time while they rewrite this.
I hear you. When I got that information from Nick Wiley that he was going to change that wording from no disturb, he said that within the instructions, it doesn't affect the ordinance, is what he told me, and that it didn't need to be rewritten. And maybe that's not correct, but that's what he had mentioned to me. And as far as the other issue on doing different things with the 25 feet, making a water garden type thing. I talked with some people, Nick Wiley and Gary for that matter, and talking about who's going to pay for that to put into that rain garden. Is that going to cost more money than it is to just have the 50 feet wetlands protection zone? I'm not sure. It was something that they were going to look into as an option, because it might cost more money. Yes, Councilor Reynolds.
So, I'm gonna go to the no disturb zone too. It's also, it's in their application 2 or 3 times, quite frankly. So I'm with Erin that this should come back out. I mean, we can't vote on something, we just told Council Waterman the same thing, that doesn't have it written correctly. And it's a long thing. On top of that, I just want to suggest that and this was discussed, the 61 applications, that 60 were approved and 1 was denied. The one that was actually denied was in a no disturbance zone, and I'm going to keep calling it that because it's on every single thing that the city has, no disturbance zones. And the only one that was said no to belonged to the gentleman that wrote the type of plants that you can plant in the 25-foot zone. And before I go to that, and that was because he was asking for a 6-foot incursion for a driveway for that. Everybody else got approved because everything was outside the 25-foot. So had we gone to 50, those people would have been denied too. So believe me, there's some issues there that we really need to take a look at. I agree that we should look at the information that was given us to, by Scott, that talked about how you can plant things there, because quite frankly, if you have builders, let's say even you have people that already have something outside they've built on their land. It's 25 feet, 125 feet, and they have adhered to that. Now this goes into effect, let's say you add the other 25, you're at 150. Now people have to really move it up. There's no exemptions if you're coming in for an application and it's 150. It's 150. They're just saying the exemptions just keep them from taking you, making you move things. So, I mean, if it goes to 150, you have to abide by that. Whether it worked for you at 125 or not, you are now under the 150. It doesn't make any sense to me that we would do that when so far nothing has really gone amiss. If we were to use some of the things that were in that booklet that we received from Scott, you could then look at that, and I bet you anything that if people were building homes on their lots, or the builder was building them, he would be more, or she would be more than glad to put those kinds of fauna and flora in there, in that 25-foot, because it's going to pay off for them in additional lots. And for me as a person, if I had this land and I wanted to, you know, I think that really has, first, several things happened. All of the people that spoke in favor, and I give them a lot of credit, but they're organized groups, and they knew ahead of time that this was coming out. A lot of the people that I spoke to that didn't really know this was coming out were on school vacation with their kids. They couldn't even get here. They weren't around. So personally, with all the changes and the information we received from Scott Rolfe, I think, and the other speakers that were here, I think we should have left this open. I believe that it should come out again, and that we really allow people in the community to know what's happening here. Because there are so many people that called me and said, oh my God, I saw it on TV, but I didn't understand what it was all about. And does that mean I can do this? Does that mean I can do that? So I think that there was only one side that had enough information early to make these kind of decisions. And I am with Erin that this should be redone. I just think that the 25 to 50 is not warranted, and that it's an overreach for us to take this land that other people own. It's not, if it was our land, if any one of us owned that land, which I don't know if you do, but I don't, but I can tell you I would not like it. It's my land, I own it, and I don't think the city, the state, the Conservation Commission has a right to ask you for more when there's nothing wrong with the 25. They have yet to tell us what went wrong. So I am so vehemently opposed, vehemently.
Counselor McIntyre.
Thank you, Councilor Soria. To address the point about the text of the do not disturb, I'm reading this just very quickly off the top of my head. I don't think I see the words do not disturb in the actual language of the amendment that we're voting on, unless someone wants to point, if there's a page. I see undisturbed, but I do not see do not disturb, but as is referenced on some of the applications and city materials. So is do not disturb actually in the text of this amendment?
It is definitely in the application.
I don't
On
believe
no
it's on
disturb zone.
So,
I don't believe so.
okay, so I guess the point that I would have there is, it sounds like, that's not in the text that we'll be voting on, but it sounds like the city is aiming to make those changes. So I don't think it needs to come out and be rewritten, since that term isn't actually referenced in the text that we're voting on. In terms of the actual issue at heart, obviously there's been a lot of public discussion about this. I think we've received, all of us, lots of emails, calls, the public hearing, we were all here for quite a while on it. I think, at least from my perspective, the lion's share of the comments I've received have been in favor of this. I think wetlands are a vital part of our city's environment. They serve numerous purposes, both in terms of protecting the environment, our water supply, and those important service really that they provide our community is only going to become more and more important as our community deals with the impact of climate change in the future. And I certainly understand and hear and respect the concerns that people brought up, especially about housing affordability. I think in my reading of the actual text, I do think it's written in a way that is a good balance and really minimizes those risks. So I plan to support this. That being said, I do hope that this is also an opportunity for us to come together, in the future to address the housing affordability issue that was brought up. But I still think that we can have both. I think this is an opportunity where we can have our cake and eat it too. So I plan to support this and would hope my colleagues would as well.
Were you, then you have your hand up. Okay, I'm sorry. Counselor Tavares.
So I'm concerned about these changes. During the public hearing, I asked the conservation agent, Nick Wiley, about ideally, right, if we're looking at this from an environmental standpoint, right, ideally, what would that buffer zone be? He couldn't pin a number, right? So what's being proposed is 50 feet, but quite frankly, I don't see the evidence to support the substantial change from 25 to 50 feet in terms of the benefit that we get from that, right? What I'm hearing is, if anything, if we're gonna peg a number, it needs to be much larger to provide any sort of real tangible impact, is my understanding, right? So call it what you want, but it sounds like this is more of a political compromise, right? To move it from 25 to 50 feet. I mean, obviously, the history speaks for itself, right? This body saw this was way before my time, right? A proposal to extend it to 75 feet, that was not digestible. And so now the question is 50 feet going to be digestible? But the real answer that I heard from Nick Wiley, unless anyone heard something different, is that in his estimation, what he would really do is use a variable buffer zone, right? So one of the things that I'm concerned about is we're painting with a broad brush here, right? We're saying, well, we're going to extend the wetlands protection buffer zone from 25 to 50 feet across the whole city, regardless of how that impacts any particular neighborhoods or portions of our city. And I think that's a disservice, right? I grew up and live in South Attleboro, right? I've been there for almost 30 years. And actually over 30 years, I guess, but I don't even know how old I am. But the issue that I see with this, and I've received numerous concerned resident emails, texts, phone calls of people who live in South Attleboro and other more, in and around downtown as well, of concerns over, hey, look, these are smaller lots, right? So pushing this buffer zone from 25 to 50 feet could mean something very different for someone who lives on a 5,000, 7,000 square foot lot, 10,000 square foot lot than someone who has an acre or 2 acres, right? That might not impact you in the same way, right? 25 to 50 feet. that might make sense, right? In other parts of the city, that could be the difference between being able to put a shed or being able to put a garage. And I get the next question is well, what about the exemptions, right? And you look at the exemptions, well, you're only allowed to do some of those things, right, in previously disturbed areas, right? So if parts of your property are still in their natural state, well, good luck trying to get approval to put in your shed or your garage, right? Because now the presumption is against you, right? Because to the point made earlier, technically speaking, under the ordinance, yeah, I might agree, and I believe our city planner has said this, it's not technically a do not disturb zone, but that's effectively how it's treated, because now you have to overcome this presumption that there is a significant harm in terms of the environment in the area that you're impacting, right? And that becomes very difficult to prove as the applicant. And even if you're able to prove that, right, what do you have to do? You have to spend money on surveys. You have to spend money on engineers, right? You have to understand the process, right? Do I need a waiver? Do I need a variance? What do I need? That costs time and money, right? And so this isn't something that just affects developers. These are things that affect residents. And to be honest, a lot of the concerns that I received were from residents, right, who live in these areas that will be directly impacted. It's easy to talk about, environmental protection and, hey, we're doing the right thing for the city when these are properties that you're not affected by. But I think it's important that we think about those things because, once you implement something like this, it's very difficult to come back from that. So this is definitely something that I will not support. And quite frankly, I don't think enough work has been put into this to thoughtfully think through how we can protect our wetlands, our environment, while balancing other values like housing affordability and things like that, right? So, and Nick admitted, the idea of looking at a variable buffer zone wasn't even looked at. We can't even say how many properties this is affecting in the city. I think these are basic questions that we owe to the residents to at least do some due diligence to think through before we sit down and vote on some sort of proposal. So I think this is sloppy the way that we're doing this.
I know that they had talked about variable wetlands zones, but I don't know who would choose where that is. I mean, I guess that would be hard for any one person to be able to choose that, if they're gonna say, oh, well, this person can do this much and that person can do this much, but I don't know how they would be able to do that, in their deciding where a variable wetland was. So go ahead, Councilor
The
Flowers.
city employs a city planner. We employ a conservation agent. The planning department engages with outside consulting groups that come out and review things like this for applicants, right? When it comes to, we heard about like certifying vernal pools and other on the field things. I could go on and on about the resources that the city could tap into, right, to explore some of these things. They're not. It's definitely not impossible. Is it going to take some time? Sure, absolutely. Is it going to take some resources to do? Absolutely. But I think we owe it to at least look into some of these things before we pass an ordinance. That's the point that I'm making.
Councilor Angelo.
I certainly would have no problem with a variable ordinance, but either way, whatever happens, I can tell you that my Ward 4, is strongly in favor of this. So if I was to listen to my residents, I need to listen to them. And like I listened to the residents on the zoo, as much as I was okay with the mayor's plan and was looking forward to some things that I thought was actually going to make the zoo better, I still listened to the residents of what they wanted. And we actually had, what it came down to, really had a bigger turnout for this wetlands protection in favor of it. And in my ward, it's extremely important. So whatever happens, if it's a variable or if it stays the way it is, I have to vote for my residents of Ward 4 that strongly want this and strongly need this. In addition to many areas have a lot of flooding in my ward too as well. So I would have to either way support either one. And I have to listen to my constituents. And if I don't, and if I vote differently, then that's telling my constituents I don't really care about what they think. So, but I've had so many people reach out to me. I've had one person reach out to me against it, but so many reach out for me and for this, want this bad. So I have to vote for my ward, which is Ward 4, and I have to protect them. And so either way, I'll support either one.
Any other comments?
Thank you. So a couple things. I mean, I generally support this, but I really, I mean, we just dumped 91 million gallons of water that was partially treated into the 10 Mile River. So if we need to do more as a city, if we're going to be telling residents you can't, build on your land, this needs to be a bigger global picture here that we're focused on, not just, well, residents who own land, we're going to do this, but as a city, yeah, it's okay for us to do these things. We need to make sure that we're also, as a city, doing the right things. And we can always do a motion to change. If the language, we don't like it, we could do a motion to change. Nick isn't going to do that. We would do that. So I don't know about the applications or anything like that. But I did feel like Councilor Reynolds was asking some pretty specific data points, and even Councilor Dryers, and we really didn't get the answers on them. Just about how many properties this would impact. How much, it was just kind of glossed over a little bit. I felt like there were some details, but then other things that we were asking more specifics on, it wasn't really presented to us. Maybe we should have left the public hearing open. And I guess that concludes my comments.
To Councilor Holmes's point, every question I had gotten, and I don't know if the other council's done that, but every question I got, I've spoken to Nick Wiley, I've spoken to Gary Arazian, and got everything answered, and a lot of it got put on to the board for the councils to see. So I'm not sure if anybody's done that. Have they reached out to, done their due diligence and reached out to them in person? But I would always encourage to do that, because I did that. I've been driving those guys crazy all week long with so many questions and stuff. So hopefully that has happened and they would have their answers and stuff. But I would encourage that to do their work and ask those questions.
I wanted to just also mention, as a comment to your comment, was that there's so many wetlands, it's hard to know where everything is, and Nick had mentioned to me that you can get drones and what they call a GIS system to look at everything and kind of overhead, but you're not going to see everything with trees covering the ground and all that. So we don't know exactly where all the wetlands are, all of the land. They can also hire a consultant to go out and look at everybody at all the land, but that would cost a lot of money. So we're just going by what people are asking for and, what we know of the city. So that's how they're finding that information. Councilor Navarez.
And I agree with that, and I heard, Nick mention that. Obviously, there's a cost to doing that, but again, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything, right? Is the GIS map 100% accurate? No, I can tell you that by experience, right? So, but at the same time, it's still going to give you a starting point, right? So for us to say, well, the GIS map isn't going to be 100% accurate, so we can't use it to help us identify which properties are going to be impacted or where these wetlands are. I think that's way too much of an oversimplification, right? Now, there's extremes, right? There's the other side where, we're looking under every nook and cranny to make sure that, we understand the topography everywhere and, every single square inch of wetlands. And, I don't think we have the resources, obviously, to do that, and that's probably not practical. But there at least ought to be a starting point where we can look at some of these things, right? I was just surprised by some of the basic questions that I asked, that we couldn't even get a starting point, just general answers on, hey, this is probably where it starts, right? And being conservative where those numbers might be, right? And if we actually, decided to implement some additional measures, we could really refine these numbers or metrics or, whatever it is. Just another point on the on a variable buffer zone and thinking about it, not necessarily just in terms of distance, right? Like, is it 50 feet? Is it, 25 feet? Should it be 100 feet? Whatever it is. The other issue too is I think we're treating all of these from what I heard, unless I'm mistaken, but this is what I heard from Nick and Gary, is that we're again we're painting with a broad brush in terms of how we approach all of these protected resource areas, regardless of what sorts of areas they are. We're just lumping them together as wetlands. So it doesn't matter whether it's a vernal pool or an uncertified vernal pool or a floodplain or whatever it is that this protected resource might be. And so again, that's when we're already in a situation where you look at the price of land in this city. I mean, to build on any buildable lot, right, for someone who wants to build their home, I mean, at this point, you're gonna be lucky to find anything for $175,000, right? You're looking at $200,000 plus, generally speaking, right, for just a buildable lot. And so, this is one of those things that's going to continue to push land prices higher. We already don't have that much land, right? And the other thing to think about too is just, let's think about the percentage of wetlands that we have in the city. And I don't know what that number is, but I remember sitting down with the planner in Norton once for a project that I was working on. And I remember he gave the figure that almost half of Norton is made up of wetlands. What does that mean? You're not going to build on 50% of the land in the town, right? And on top of that, you already have the existing buffer zone, so you can start to chip away at that, right? So that's already a built-in barrier. And I think to Councilor Morrissey's point too, we heard during the public hearing, at least some potential solutions or options to look into and how to maximize our current 25-foot buffer zone and how can we get the most out of it. And I don't think we're doing those things, right? Have we explored that? And that's my concern. Why are we jumping to this next step before we've looked at everything that we can do now based on the way that the ordinances are written? I think it's a step too far, too soon.
I wanted to just make a comment about the distance, and you were talking about maximizing 25 feet, but I know that this science or the EPA has said that anything less than 50 is not effective in keeping back flooding and keeping back the filtration of the water, and so that's why they're going to 50 and not staying at 25. Yes, Councilor Travers.
Did you say that was an EPA report?
I believe that was EPA.
Okay.
I'll have to find the exact, but I know that that's what they had said, that they had said it was ineffective at less than 50. I'll find exactly what it was.
So 50 is the magic number?
Ineffective less than 50. Yes, Councilor Reynolds.
Well, I would say Nick called it a starting point, so I'm just using his words. Also, I know we also heard, and I cannot remember exactly whether it was 200 or 400 feet, the no build is next to our water source, near Bungie. It's at least 400, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
400. And so it doesn't, that whole thing that goes around, it affects the water quality. It does not. What did affect the water quality is probably what Councilor Holmes said, which we were dumping, half cleansed water back into the river. But we are not near the water sources. They can't build near there. I mean, it's 400 feet. There is not any of that clean water. We aren't drinking the vernal pool water. We aren't building next to it because we're 125 feet away from it. So I just think it's an overreach. It's an overreach because that's what obviously certain conservation groups want. And once we get to 50, they'll want to get to 75, they'll want to get to 100. And this is not their land. And the 125 is working. Why do we keep stepping over what's working? Why do we always try to find problems where there aren't any? We have enough that actually exist every day in this city, and we're jumping on something that is working. And there is not a problem with it. So I just cannot say enough that this is such an overreach.
I wanted to make a comment because I don't think it's 125. I think the 25 is
The
within the
100 is the
100.
state, the 25 is the buffer, but there's already a 100-foot buffer.
Right, but the 100 that they're talking about is.
It's there.
the 25 is within that 100. I don't
No,
believe that it's.
no,
125.
I don't believe it is it? So it was 75 through the state wasn't 100, and then you add the 25?
It's not
clarify?
Sorry, Councilor Tavares. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Based on my understanding of what we heard at the public hearing, the 100-foot buffer is a state buffer that has essentially lower standards. It is a kind of softer buffer, and within that 100 feet, the city has put in the 25 feet. So we are not adding an additional 25 on
So
top
you're
of
at
that
100, and it's working. So either way, it's 100 and it's working.
No,
They're at 25.
we are at 25 as a city. The 100 does not have the same level of protections that the 25 gives us. The wetlands protections that the state gives are based on the testimony provided, are minimal and are not accomplishing what our 25-foot buffer is. So they're kind of two different sets.
Okay, I see what you're saying. But it's working. The 25-foot buffer is working, so what difference does it make?
Well,
It's
I beg to differ
working.
with that, with the flooding that we've had, especially the September 11th, 2023.
We're in a drought.
flood. We had a huge flooding.
We're in a
that-
drought.
And so I don't, sorry, Council Morrison.
Please.
Thank you. I'm not necessarily against this. You know, I was leaning towards this. I am on the fence ever since I saw that last presentation. And I think before we jump to 50 feet, we should really explore the plantings within the 25. The plantings will do more to alleviate flooding than extending land. You know, the plants will absorb that extra water. Where they cleared paths in a wooded area near me, it never used to flood. They made the paths the width now of a single lane road, and it floods every time it rains, whereas before it only flooded in September of 23 when we had 2 major storms. But they went and they widened that path, and now it floods every time. So I really think adding vegetation into that 25 feet will make an enormous difference, both with the cleaning of the water and the absorption of the water. And to Gary's point, if he's concerned about like who's going to pay for this, it would become a requirement. When you, no matter what, you're going to have to go in and say, I want to put up a shed or I want to put up a garage. And then it's easy enough to make one of those requirements. Well, you have to follow this planting scheme. And if they want to do it, you know, it will get checked when the building inspector goes out to check their work anyway. He can just, you know, bring conservation along or have a little photo guide of what plants should be there. I think it's worth looking into before we just jump to take another 25 feet.
I would be concerned about affordability for that too. You know, we're talking about affordability for people and then having to have them have to plant certain plants and, you know, nothing is affordable to, you know, I know going out and just planting for myself, it's costs a lot of money just to get even some plants and to have specific plants to put into that area for a rain garden. I don't know how that would work, but, sorry. Councilor Torres?
Well, I will say for some people, and this is not everyone, but for some people, it will cost them a lot more, right? Because when you extend that buffer zone from 25 to 50 feet, you're talking about the ability the ability not to be able to put an addition on your house, right? Or to be able to build a garage or something like that, right? If you're in a situation where you are disturbing previously undisturbed areas, right? I mean, for someone who's turning into, and I think this was a question that was brought up at the community forum, for someone who's turning into an existing patio, for example, into a four-season room where they're gonna finish the space on top of it, sure, that's fine, that's already a disturbed area. But, I mean, if you're going into an area that was previously undisturbed and now it's triggered because it's within that 25 to 50 feet, well, according to the city planner, sure, you could apply to work within that buffer zone, but the question is going to be, are you going to be able to prove to the commission that you're not significantly impacting that area to overcome that presumption? You know, sometimes I think about it in terms of, I'm terrible at analogies, but it's, you know, almost like football, right? So the ref calls the play, right? And then they go on camera to look it over. Well, unless there is definitive evidence, right? Like, they're not going to overturn the call. It's sort of the same thing. It's a very high bar. So whatever you're setting is sort of the default. And again, the onus is on you as the applicant to show otherwise. That is a real cost. When we talk about real costs, engineering is not cheap. I know firsthand. I've spent a lot of money on engineering for different projects, whether it's for, you know, myself, and I can point to a lot of homeowners who have done the same thing, right? And if you're near an area with wetlands, that's something to consider, right? Especially now where people are trying to make do with the properties that they have because they're not in a position to move or whatever the case is. So they're trying to maximize what they can do on their properties. This becomes another impediment. And even if you do sort of quote unquote win, at the end of the day, you've still expended resources, time and money to get there, right? And some people aren't going to be able to even go that far.
True, but anyways, Council Delicio?
Thank you. I agree with a lot of the points that were made, especially from Councilors Tavares, Reynolds, Holmes, and Morrissey. I thought Councilor McIntyre brought up some really good points as well. I do think it's a slippery slope, though, when we start off by keeping score of who spoke in favor versus who spoke against. I think that's kind of a diversionary tactic. I think it's important to note that it was held during school vacation week, and there were a lot of people that weren't able to come out. I've heard from people who are like, we were in Florida, it's school vacation week. Trying to read my writing here, so bear with me if you don't mind. I think that this is a piece of legislation that creates more questions than it does answers and solutions. Is it a land grab? Okay, maybe not. Let's not say land grab. That's okay. It is an attack on homeowner rights. Why do homeowners have to ask for an abatement for their own property? 50 feet does cost money to the homeowner when they're paying taxes on land they can't use the way they want to or intend to. Most of the people who came and spoke in favor, if you think about what their addresses are, they're not affected by this. This doesn't impact them, but they're going to tell others how they need to use their land and what they should do. I struggle with that. I understand, and believe me, I appreciate the work of CONCOM, the Sustainability Commission, the 10 Mile River Friends Group. I do a lot of work with the 10 Mile River, but to say that, you know, who's the one person that's going to make that decision? This is government. It's not one person. And if it is, we've gone really off the rails somewhere else. We do have a conservation agent. We have the planning department. We have the Sustainability Commission that everyone was so excited to have, and they do great work. We can get contractors. We can get consultants. We can talk to DEP, EPA. We're quoting DEP, EPA. I haven't seen any report. I haven't seen any of the numbers. So we're just going to sit here and say, because somebody says it, we're going to sit there and say, oh, someone said it, it's got to be true. No, that's not our job. Our job is to vet everything that comes out. And when you have the conservation agent, and I don't want to, repackage Councilor Tavares' point, talk about he doesn't know what the magic number is. And I love Nick. Nick does a great job. This isn't about that. That's what they're asking for. Great. Just because someone asks for something doesn't mean they're automatically going to get it. Again, we have to do the homework. We have to think about what's the impact, that it's going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. What are the unintended consequences? And I think there are a lot of these. I'd love to see that data from EPA that you talked about, Chair Sawyer. but I'm just not taking somebody's word for it. I don't know that this would have prevented the flooding of September 11th. I think that still would have happened. I mean, I haven't seen any data to say anything, and to put that out there, I think that's kind of an irresponsible comment to make without the proof. I do feel strongly that this is one of those that if we vote this the way it is, it'll come back and we'll regret it. So I think that it's a good conversation to have. I don't think that this is the right piece of it at all. And that concludes my comments.
Councilor Tovar.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify something that I said earlier. I was just sort of sitting with my thoughts here, and I mentioned that this might be a sloppy approach for us. I didn't mean to insinuate at all that anything that Gary and Nick have done in planning and through this process is sloppy. Just that I don't want this to turn into an either-or fallacy for us as a council, right, when we're deliberating and thinking that either we extend the protection to 50 feet or we keep it at 25, right? I think there's a lot of other nuance sort of in between, and I want to make sure that that we're fully considering that. And that's what I meant when I used the word sloppy. So I don't want anyone to think that that was directed towards any of our city experts here that spend a lot of time to present these things to us. So.
Well, I heard all of the comments that were made, and I still feel really strongly about this expansion. I'm very kind of wavering on whether I should rescind the second and then just have some of the things clarified before we bring it back out into committee, and then bring it out to council after that. But I think that's where I'm going to go, is have the second rescinded, and then I will go back and have these things clarified before we bring it back out again. So if you would.
And I shall rescind my second.
Thank you. And that concludes the business of the Zoning, Land Use, and Sustainability Committee, and I move to adjourn at 8:40.
Second.
You're adjourned.
Economic Development and Strategic Planning is canceled. It has no business.
Call to order Public Safety and Emergency Management at 8:41. Myself, Councilor Reynolds, and Councilor Angela. I have just a few motions this evening. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of the Public Safety Answering Point Support and Incentive Grant, approximately $165,733, and any future grant amendments for fiscal year 27 from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, State 911 Department. No match is required by the city.
Second.
Thank you. So this is just a grant. We don't have to match. It enhances telecommunication, personnel costs, radio consoles. They can use it for various reasons. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer, and it's great that we got it. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve a transfer of $8,516.39 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Fire Online Service for Fire Department cell phones and data needed for interdepartmental communications.
Second.
Thank you. That's pretty self-explanatory, so it's just for the cell phones that are needed. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I entertain a motion to approve the transfer of $20,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Fire Maintenance Buildings, and to authorize the transfer of $20,000 from account Fire Maintenance Buildings to the following accounts as needed for the remainder of fiscal year 26 to cover costs related to maintenance and repair to fire stations. So it's for maintenance, masonry, HVAC service, electrical, plumbing, and it's for all of them, which is headquarters, South Attleboro, Briggs Corner, and Twin Village.
Second.
Thank you. There was a letter from the fire chief that basically says As we previously discussed, maintenance and repairs at all 4 fire stations have been routinely deferred because of budgetary constraints, but there's projects that need some attention right now, and that's why they're requesting those funds. Any comments about them? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I entertain a motion to approve a transfer of $7,400 from account citywide reserve fund for transfer to the following accounts for pre-employment medical examinations and uniforms, $4,000 to account fire medical consultation, $3,400 to account fire uniforms.
Second.
Thank you. This was just a transfer to help with, to get some uniforms for people at the fire department. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Oh, this is an exciting one. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to accept the donation of 14 new recliners purchased from Bob's Discount Furniture with an approximate value of $10,000 for the Attleboro Fire Department from the Boston Bruins Foundation, in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinance of City of Attleboro, and authorize the disposal of 14 existing recliners.
Second.
Thank you. I don't know if it was in the paper, if you read the article, but it's kind of exciting. There was a Bruins shirt and it said Attleboro on the back, and that's obviously a wonderful donation, so, yeah, check out the article if you haven't seen it, but any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. And I entertain from the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to transfer $5,000 from account citywide reserve fund for transfer to account fire maintenance of building supplies, and to authorize the transfer of $5,000 from account fire maintenance of building supplies to the following accounts as needed for the remainder of fiscal year 26 to cover costs related to maintenance and repairs to the fire stations. So it's supplies, and it's all 4 fire stations.
Second.
Thank you. It's the same letter that just basically says that things have been deferred, but there's things that are obviously needed at the station, so. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes, and that's all the business this evening. I'll call for an adjournment. Second. Did you say?
Second? Oh, you would.
Oh, second, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Oh, that's okay. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:46.
I call Public Works Committee to order at 8:46. Members present are myself and Councilor Reynolds. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, entertain a motion to approve a transfer of $6,000 from pocket salary wages to account park maintenance equipment to remove the dump body from one of the pocket forestry department's Ford F-550 trucks and replacing it with the dump body of the Ford F-450.
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 2-0. From the docket of May 5th, no, sorry. That's public hearing. That's all for Public Works. I call for adjournment at 8:47.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.
I'd like to call city property and claims to order at 8:47. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to accept the donation of 1,480 Zoo branded pins with an approximate value of $507 from Ann Fanning to the Caper Park Zoo, in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro.
Second.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody have any questions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye, that motion passes. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to declare Council on Aging furniture and equipment as surplus and available for disposition. And there are multiple things, 65 things. They run to pianos, a coat rack, armchairs, TVs, all kinds of those materials that, are in like a living area. And then all kinds of Dell computer things. So I'm not gonna read every single one off, but just suffice it to say there are 65 things here.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? You can see them in front of you. They're all in working condition, but they are going out as surplus. Any other concerns, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Okay, I entertain a motion to accept, oh no, that's on hold, sorry. And the other, so that's all the business city property and claims has this evening. I'd like to call for an adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, that we are adjourned at 8:49.
I call the License Committee to order at 8:29. Members of the committee are myself, Councilors Waterman and Holmes. We have two pieces of business on the docket tonight. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve the Ring a Bell application from Robert S. Pelagi Brothers Ice Cream LLC to ring a bell at Hayward Field and the streets of Attleboro.
Second.
It was discussed in committee. It's a renewal. Oh,
I would just like to say, I wish they'd do a ring a bell for when we get out of council. Yeah, so, other than that.
any other questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Okay, this would be, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve the Ring a Bell application from Adam Pelagi Brothers Ice Cream LLC to ring a bell at Hayward Field and the streets of Attleboro.
Second.
No comments. Anyone, questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I do want to make the committee aware of one item that came in over the weekend. It came to myself and the city clerk, and it is a complaint about an automobile dealership, 97 Emery Street LLC. She's asking for basically an investigation. She's supplied some information.
Point of order, I'm not sure we can talk about it
Oh.
until it comes in to us from the clerk's office, and then it's assigned to committee.
Okay, I apologize.
No worries.
That concludes the business for the License Committee. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned at 8:51.
I call ordinances, elections, and legislative matters to order at 8:51. Members of my committee include myself, Councilor Holmes, and Councilor McIntyre. On the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve the request to have Attleboro Recreation Center at 81 Pine Street used as an emergency backup polling place designation.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. So this stems from a requirement really from the elections division that has tasked local election offices with designating backup polling locations in their contingency plans for elections. So as folks probably saw in the backup communication between Sharon and the mayor, they've looked at using the rec center for that. So my understanding from having a conversation with Sharon is we've never had to do this before, use a backup location, but that just seems like it would be the best location in the city. And one of my questions for her was whether this would accommodate, for example, more than one ward, for example, if, I don't know, maybe there were two buildings that had flooding, or maybe a more likely scenario, something like, Studley and the high school, there's some sort of, traffic issue there, right? And people aren't able to access, those two polling locations, combining multiple wards into the rec center, and that's not a problem at all. But hopefully all of this is theoretical and you never have to use it. Councilor Angelo.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. It's a great location, it's a great area, and it's huge if you've ever been in there. There's plenty, you could probably easily fit several wards in there. The only thing I'm curious about is it handicap accessible? I'm not sure. I don't know if that would be an issue or not, or a regulation issue, or is there already an element, because I know there's, because the front is you get all the stairs, and then the side, there's another one, and maybe there is an elevator there and that constituted it. I don't know if that's a regulation of that or not, but I just just something that popped in my head, and I'm definitely not one to go against any of that.
No, that's a good point. I'm sure they looked at it, but it's worth asking the question. Councilor McIntyre?
I don't unfortunately have the plan they submitted in front of us, but I do recall something in there saying that it was ADA compliant, but we can confirm. I'm 90% sure.
Yes.
So there is a ramp on the side, there is an elevator inside, and I believe over the last several years, there's been a lot of work done to, as Councilor McIntyre said, bring it up to current code and relating to ADA.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, it does say in the backup, it says it's centrally located, has on-street as well as lot parking. The gymnasium is accessible. So, but, I mean, I'll ask the direct question, but appreciate you asking the question.
All right, thanks. Sounds like it's all set, but yeah, no, I was curious.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. From the docket of May 5th, 2026, I entertain a motion to approve the police detail recommendation from Deputy Chief Timothy Cook, the Attleboro Police Department, for the number of police officers needed to staff Attleboro's polling locations for all elections to be held in the 2026 calendar year.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. So this is just a routine piece of business that we get this time of year. This is just to approve the number of police details on election day at each of the polling locations, and the clerk's communication from several weeks ago that was specified in that memo. It's the same detail as 2 years ago when we received this last. So I really have no additional comments. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. In the docket of April 7th, 2026, I entertain a motion to amend section 20-8.2 revenues of the revised ordinances of the city of Attleboro as follows. Strike the existing language under section 20-8.2 revenues. The city auditor shall establish the fire ambulances fund number 2610 as a separate fund and credit to the fund 40% of the income generated by charges for municipal ambulance service. Replace it with the following. 20-8.2 revenues. The city auditor shall establish the fire ambulances fund number 2610 as a separate fund and credit to the fund a percentage of the income generated by charges for municipal ambulance service according to the following schedule. 40% through June 30, 2026, 42% effective July 1, 2026, 44% effective July 1, 2027, 46% effective July 1, 2028, 48% effective July 1, 2029, 50% effective July 1, 2030, and for each fiscal year thereafter.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Okay, so in the backup communication from Chief LaChance, we've got just a high-level description of what's been going on with that ambulance fund that's referenced in the proposed ordinance change here. But that's the fire ambulance revolving fund that is referenced here in the ordinance. And right now, all of the revenues that come in from the ambulance service are split 60-40, right? So 40% goes back into the program, and then the rest into the general fund. The issue that we're seeing, and I know we've probably all heard this several times from the chief over the last several years, is with call volume continuing to go up, and just the cost of doing business when it comes to them running that program, and also wanting to expand those services in the future. It's going to require a little bit more of a shift in terms of the revenue that they get to cover those costs, so they're not pulling from the general fund, right? So I think part of the compromise was, well, if we really want to be at a 50-50 split, maybe the best way to do that is incremental over time. And I had a conversation with Mason about this too, just talking through the mechanics of this and making sure that, especially in light of the conversations we've had the last several weeks about the budget and some of the financial constraints, and even just earlier this evening from the mayor, that are we putting a strain on the budget here in the city by doing this, and obviously increasing it by 10%, the shift is going to feel very different than 2% in 1 year. So this is something that they've accounted for, and Mason thinks, based on his projections of how this will grow and the amount that they'll be able to bill back to be able to recoup some of these costs from insurance, will grow over time. So the city, in theory, shouldn't really see an effect if we're moving this ever so slightly every year by 2% down to 2030. The other thing that I had a question for him about was about the expenditure limit, because that was one of the things that the chief mentioned in the memo of he sees that that the balloon, right, of expenditures, going up over time. And we approved the increase from 1.5 to 1.8 million in FY25. But that next stage that he sees is really 2 million, and I didn't see that anywhere here referenced in the ordinance, and I know you probably have to come back to the council to get that approval, but Mason doesn't foresee us needing to increase that cap for a while, so hopefully that's good news, but Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. I'm happy that this is happening. I think it's been promised to the chief for a few different administrations. He's been pushing for this for a while, and now this is actually happening, so I'm assuming he's probably happy about this, so it makes sense.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. From the docket of March 17, 2026, I entertain a motion to amend section 20-13.3, purposes and expenditures of the revised ordinances of the city of Attleboro governing the animal shelter revolving fund, to expand the language as follows: strike the existing language under section 20-13.3, purposes and expenditures. During each fiscal year, the animal control officer, with the approval of the police chief and the mayor, may incur liabilities against and spend monies from the animal shelter fund for capital improvements of the animal shelter building. Replace it with the following: during each fiscal year, the animal control officer, with the approval of the police chief and the mayor, may incur liabilities against and spend monies for the animal shelter for capital improvements of the animal shelter building, routine and preventative maintenance of the facility, and contractual services related to the upkeep and operational integrity of the shelter grounds and buildings.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. So I think this one's a classic example of unintended consequences in government, right? Like, so when we pass ordinances and we make policy as a body, sometimes there's things that maybe fall through the cracks or we don't think through, right? And this is a great example of where we've got an ordinance that allows from this fund the city to expend monies for capital improvements for the animal shelter fund. It doesn't actually provide the ability to maintain those structures. And so this is all that we're doing here, is amending the language to be able to help us to tap into those funds that we can't. I think at this point it's over $100,000 that's in that account that cannot be utilized for maintenance, right? Which is crazy if you think about it, but so this is really just to clean up, but I think it's a good example of, it got me thinking, when we do, look at proposed ordinances, are we thinking about some of these unintended consequences? And some of them are easy to fix, right? Like something like this, but some are a little bit more difficult. So, sorry for the editorialization, but Councilor Angelo.
Thanks, Councilor Ross, for taking care of this. I thank you, the cats and dogs, thank you over there, and all the animal control officers. So I appreciate it very much. This is very important. Obviously, it's close to my heart, so thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes. And that concludes the business for ordinances, elections, and legislative matters. I call for an adjournment at 9:03.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
I call Finance Committee to order at 9:03. I will not be bringing out any pieces of business this evening. However, I have called for 2 CIP meetings, Capital Improvement Program, this upcoming Thursday, April 30th at 6 PM here. We'll have the police chief to come down to talk about his capital improvement needs. We're kind of doing this because he's going to be out of town for the next couple weeks at a training. So then the following Thursday, May 7th, we'll have Chief LaChance, Derek, and I'm going to try to get water and wastewater down here as well. Same time, 6 o'clock. That being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? There's none. We are adjourned at 9:04.
So 6:30 Thursday?
6 o'clock.
Oh, 6
Yep.
o'clock, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Please don't forget to turn in your minutes.